No, I think I appreciate the fact that you think Allison's theory there is out to lunch with a theological explanation. But then you made some other ones like, well, it's on a mountain now, and so that's symbolizing Moses. And I kind of found that one to be almost on par with that. No offense at all. But I did like your Passover theological explanation. That's probably a whole lot better of a symbolic interpretation, a theological interpretation that John would be making than the whatever Allison was saying there. And so the problem with all of these different things here is that we could just kind of do this ad infinitum. Okay. I mean, I could like tell any kind of a story from real life and give it some sort of air of reality. I mean, like, for example, Napoleon going into exile on an island, not once, but twice. A very clever biblical scholar could come along and say, well, clearly this is an example of a doublet, and the island is symbolism for England. Napoleon's enemy, while his escape represents a mythical trope of the hero escaping from the realm of the dead or something like that. You could look at details about Jesus sleeping on a pillow that you only find in Mark's gospel. It says that he's just this casual mention of him sleeping in a pillow. It's not an undesigned coincidence. And you could just say, oh, well, Jesus was sleeping on a pillow, just like Jacob was sleeping on a rock back in Genesis 28, and the disciples were afraid, and well, Jacob was afraid, and then Jacob wrestled with the angel, and then he had faith, and then Jesus spoke to the winds and the waves, and then the disciples had faith, and you could kind of go on and on and on and on with these things. An object lesson where people make this mistake and then later like have to realize like, that was dumb, was a French critic by the name of Albert Loisy. I believe he was French, and he talks about the pool of Bethesda, where it's in John 5:3. There's 5 covered colonnades, right? And there's disabled people, the blind and the lame and the paralyzed. You probably like that one because I think it ties into some of the mythology there. But he says that the ancients who thought they found a spring of symbol of Judaism in the 5 porticos were an allusion to the 5 books of the law, no doubt encountered the thought of the evangelist. And then, well, later on, archaeology has proven that, well, no, there was 5 covered colonnades of the pool of Bethesda, Bethesda. And so I almost said Bethsaida. But anyways, and so you could kind of come up with these theological interpretations. But the one thing that I really wanted to hit on here is that doesn't really even address the coincidence, right? You could come up with, well, this is why John was inventing this over here, but that doesn't have anything to do with the information that we have with Mark, and that they interlock. They just happen to interlock. And we could think of theological explanations, like I said, ad infinitum, but just explaining a theological explanation on one side with one gospel doesn't do away at all with the interlocking casualness that they have. And I think that's the main weakness and where people kind of run off track with this. Does that make sense?
Right. Well, so as far as the maybe we could just deal with the location of the feeding of the 5,000, because it's a known thing in legendary accretion for previously unknown or nameless characters to be given whole backstories and have stories made up about them. We've been able to analyze ancient writings, and we have found this, and this is even in the mainstream biblical scholar stuff, that nameless or unknown, or maybe people that are named but really aren't given any kind of backstory are later found to be given backstories, or even sometimes whole stories made about them. That's exactly what John was doing. John was creating stories for this disciple Philip, and so he had Philip come from Bethsaida because in the story of the feeding of the 5,000, he asked Philip or whatever because he's from Bethsaida. John, the author of the Gospel of John, knows that the feeding of the 5,000 takes place at least somewhere near Bethsaida, due to the fact that he has Mark, Matthew, and Luke that he's using in order to compose his gospel. And so that just becomes another story that he makes up about Philip. I mean, I'm not trying to make this sound like I'm saying that this is like 100% what happened. I'm providing what I'm trying to do when I give you these alternate explanations. Sure. Is saying, well, this is an alternate explanation that also explains all of the evidence that we have. And if we have that, what do we have to discern between that and the undesigned coincidence that, we have some kind of unnamed eyewitness account that informed this part. Now, normally with histories, right, we have whole discussions on sources, why these sources are good eyewitnesses, and the authors usually take a very interactive role in their histories, and they'll tell us, well, this person told us this or something like that. We don't have that in the Gospels at all. And so if this is an eyewitness account, I mean, honestly, we should expect the gospel author to tell us, well, who told us this? And the only thing that we really have is at the beginning of the Gospel of John, it talks about how there's a disciple, John, and this is his eyewitness testimony about it. And that's it. But I mean, we don't know who the author is of the Gospel of John. And, we don't know if any of it is actually the eyewitness testimony. We just get sort of a vague reference at the very beginning of the gospel. And so it seems to me like the undesigned coincidence explanation leaves a lot of unanswered questions versus the current mainstream explanation that the gospel writers were redacting, copying, sometimes making things up, or maybe they were pulling from another source or something like that. We simply don't know. But the fact that this redaction hypothesis, I guess you could say, makes far more sense of the evidence that we have than undesigned coincidences.